Hello, and welcome to the Expansive Leadership Podcast. My name is Matthias Schmidt, and I'm an executive coach. I'm a serial founder and a leadership speaker. And I talk about all of this good stuff at events and at workshops. And I support founders and exited founders on their journey transitioning in the post-exit, but also already in a pre-exit area, because really exiting a company is a huge transition. And it oftentimes comes along with confusion, with a lack of direction, and a sense of, I don't know what's next. And that's where I support, so that founders can really find a deep sense of purpose, create something meaningful after their exit, and also create a bigger impact in their life, leave a legacy where they contribute to the world at its whole and a better kind of humanity. And today we are talking about something super, super interesting and important, which is the evolution of our needs and values. So how do our needs and values actually over time in our lives change and evolve? And there's a very clear path to that. And that's beautiful, because this can explain why, for example, 5 years ago, you had different needs than you have now. And it can also give you a good outlook into the future, what's going to be important for you in the future. So you can already plan ahead for that. And you can take in account whatever you're doing in your life, whatever you're planning into your life, whatever your vision is, but you can take into account what's going to come next. And there's 7 very clear steps in the psychological evolution of a human being that we all are, if we watch this podcast, right? Probably, I don't know who else is watching, but there's 7 very clear steps. And this is drawn from the Richard Barrett model. So I want to give all the credits to this incredibly smart, beautiful, amazing man that has been studying psychological evolution in human beings for decades. So just so you know, this is not what I came up with. I came up obviously with this podcast and with the stories and with all the studies and statistics that we're going to look at. But the general model comes from Richard Barrett. And I'm going to put a link underneath so you can also check it out, dive deeper if you want. So why is this important? It's so important because there's a point in life that maybe back in the days we used to call midlife crisis, where all of a sudden people were searching for meaning, where people were not satisfied with the old life anymore that they had built, with the striving for approval, for validation, and for success only. But there was something deeper that they wanted to explore. And unfortunately, back in the days, this had not been explored so much. And that's why you can see with older people, a lot of the time, if they don't really answer this call in their lives, and nowadays, even for younger people, this call is coming. Like for me, it came when I was 29 years old. But a lot of the time, when older people never follow that call in their life, they can be kind of like very boring and very squared, and you think like, wow, okay, life has kind of sucked the energy out of them. And this is when we don't go along with the change that happens in our lives. And that's when we don't go along with the growth in our needs and in our values, especially, because needs and values, what is it? It's inherently what we try to achieve every day, why we do the things that we do. Our values represent always an underlying need that we want to fulfill in our lives, so that we can feel happy and feel fulfilled. And if we're off track from our values, when we're off track from actually fulfilling the needs that are in that moment important in our lives, then fear can come up, we can become anxious, we can even go into burnout. So a huge reason why people go into burnout is actually because they don't live the value that in that moment is important for them. And so it has all these negative side effects if we don't know our values and if we don't live them. So that's why I want to dive deep today and really give you a roadmap what the 7 steps in this evolution are. All right, let's start with the first 3 of these steps. And they are what Richard Barrett describes egoic needs. And they come from, in the evolution, that we have to first build like a body and an ego in order to survive in this world, right? The ego is really important for ourselves. So the ego is kind of like the prefrontal cortex, an attachment to life, where we say, okay, I recognize that this is my body, this is my house, this is my microphone. And that's what the ego does. And the egoic needs are in the very basic is stability and safety. The second one is building relationships and actually having a feeling valued and loved. And the third one is achieving excellence and achieving success, like forming this kind of validation for yourself. And these come in also in our age. So these come in certain ages in our lives. At the very basic, when we get born as children, we're very, very vulnerable and we need safety and protection. So obviously this need has to be fulfilled. The second one afterwards comes online when we get when we become socially active people. So we want this love and this appreciation from others. And then the third one, the achieving excellence, is kind of this sense of pride and the sense of, hey, I can really, I can do the things in my life and I can actually achieve something. I can have success. And then something very important comes online. That's the fourth step, and that's the transition. It's called individuation into a more where Richard Barrett says that our higher self, our higher version comes online and actually interferes with our lives. And that's oftentimes what I refer to as midlife crisis. All of a sudden, things don't make sense anymore. We realize that we have been, all of a sudden there's a great awareness also in our lives that we have lived in patterns and in programs that maybe we have taken from our parents, that maybe we have taken from our society, and that do not serve us anymore. So for me, for example, there was a point when I had really reached a lot of success in the two businesses that I had built at first, when I was feeling super super proud and at the top and partying every weekend, different women, having beautiful vacations. All of a sudden this felt empty. And this didn't feel like my life anymore. Whereas 2-3 years before that, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I want to do that my whole life. But our needs and values change, as I said, right? So in the first 3 steps, we first need safety and health. We need this kind of open communication. We have values like connection, like respect and satisfaction, customer satisfaction in a company. The third one is more about self-esteem, the one where we really want the validation, self-esteem and productivity, efficiency also in a company, And then the more we evolve, we come into this kind of individuation where we want to make life on our own terms. And that's so profoundly beautiful, because all of a sudden we realize that the patterns, the programs from the society and the parents that we had are not serving us anymore. And for me, that was when I realized that I definitely had a lot of fears around rejection. I did a lot of things because I didn't want to be rejected. That's also why I created a lot of the success, was to feel valued from the outside, even though it didn't really give me that intrinsic value from the inside. And that's what I realized. Before it was fun, but then in the fourth step, in this individuation stage, I realized that this was something that actually then hindered me in my journey, and that actually was like it kind of blocked me. So we always have a primary motivation that is associated with the higher stage, with the more complex stage of our values and needs, and then we have a secondary motivation. And I was 5 years ago at this point of individuation, so really feeling my higher self, my biggest version come online and be there and be like, hey, there's something more to explore in this life than what you have been doing right now. But then the secondary motivation came in, and for me that's on level 2, really feeling loved and appreciated by other beings. And I had a huge wound, a huge deep psychological wound around that I needed to feel that from others. So I could not evolve. I could not completely break free from my patterns. And this is what happens if we don't account for the secondary motivations and the lower motivations that we have in our life, the less complex needs. For example, if you run out of money, for example, if you don't get the self-esteem and the pride from what you do, or if you don't feel seen and valued by others, they can kick in and they can kind of sabotage our growth in life, right? Does that make sense? So I was in this individuation stage, and like higher values wanted to come online, but I was kind of held down. What happens if we then, through therapy or through trauma-informed coaching, we kind of fulfill those needs, or through like actually being on the outside, like creating these kind of circumstances that we really can fulfill the lower needs, then we can actually evolve into a more whole version of ourselves. And this whole version then comes in the fifth stage, which is the self, which is the alignment, where we have authentic expression comes online, and where we actually self-actualize into a fully value-driven human being. And then all of a sudden, values like trust come online, like passion, integrity, creativity, openness. These are all important values in this stage. So we come from the lowest stages, the kind of egoic needs, and then in level 4, in this individuation, also the midlife crisis can be some kind of this. When you experience intense burnout, this is a sign for this. Or when you just feel a sense of meaninglessness in your life, then the 4th stage is there, and this is about empowerment, about transformation, about innovation, about continuous learning, about bringing yourself into like a state of, okay, I wanna figure this out, like what's there, what's new in life, what's next. And if we go through that smoothly, then we come into like the self-actualization stage, and we create our lives around our own values. We realize the patterns, we heal the patterns that have held us back, and we can actually create a life that is feels fully aligned. So alignment, integrity, trust, honesty, all of that comes online. And then in the end, it goes into like this collaboration stage, where we then, when we are these fully realized human beings, when we really know what our value is, but in a humble way, then we want to form partnerships, and we look for fulfillment in life, and we form strategic alliances. We're ready for a real community. We want to maybe mentor others and coach others. And it's so important, again, that we have a secondary motivation. So naturally, we want to grow up in the ladder, right? This is the natural evolution of psychological development in human beings. But if we don't account through, fulfilling these lower needs, they can be also kind of like packed away in trauma, or in like childhood experiences that weren't pleasant, in programming from our parents, from our society that doesn't serve us, but that's so deep that it still influences us. It can be like a kick in the back, and we always regress. So for me, as I said, that was like trying to please others, especially trying to please women, where I would stay in an environment with people that did not support the growth that I was on. And then I would stay in this kind of environment with the values of this environment, but these values were not mine anymore. And I felt like there was like this kind of mind behavior gap. I knew more than I was actually living. And that's what you experience when you kind of have this gap, and you need to address the lower egoic needs, or you need to do that in trauma-informed coaching or in therapy, in order to get into an expansion state in your life, in an expansion state where you actually truly live by your own values and on your own terms and in alignment with yourself. And if you do that, then in the end, the final stage, the last stage, the 7th stage, is about contribution, full service. Kind of the values that come online there is like vision, future generations, social responsibility, being of full service, like really just dedicating your life to full service to the planet, human beings, and nature. That's it. These are the 7 stages of evolution. And to give like a quick overview, it's the first 3 stages are kind of like the egoic needs. Then we have this transition point of the individuation, where we realize, okay, this, like, the ego is not really serving us anymore. It serves us in some kind of way to make money, to feel proud and achieve something, to feel connected to others. But we want more. There's more. Like, what's next in life? Like, what's missing? It's kind of oftentimes there's a kind of like emptiness and confusion. Especially I work with a lot of exited founders, as I said, that this comes after the exit, because we have been at the top of success and all of a sudden, what's now? And that's where really our consciousness can expand, because when we have times of stillness where nothing happens, then all of a sudden the consciousness can expand, and we go into this state of, okay, growth, like new things come all of a sudden into our space. And that's why this 4th stage can be so hard to go through, right, by yourself. And that's important if it's really challenging, to get like mentor, to get a coach who knows the path and who has been through that, in order to go through that smoothly, because there are certain steps to take, self-reflection, and certain routines that we can do that really smooth out this process, and also account for the lower needs that might be still, where fears still might come up. So I see a lot of founders that exit the company and then are anxious afterwards. They're super stressed about the freedom they have, because there's some lower needs about being seen and being loved and being heard that came from actually creating the company. So there's external validation, and now we need to create this internal validation so they can be at peace, they feel calm, and they can actually also just be satisfied and content with the achievements that they have. And then after this 4th stage, like, we can really truly blossom into alignment and into this kind of like fully expressed version of ourselves that then ultimately ends in service to humanity, nature, human beings, whatever. These are the 7 stages. I hope that brought you a lot of insight about the kind of stages of development in human beings. And I'm wondering, where do you sense you yourself are? Where do you sense you are in this ladder? Like, are you somewhere in the like achieving success, like the number 3, like really trying to prove the value that you have, trying to having values like productivity, self-esteem, maybe even competence, excellence, things like that? Are you transitioning? Are you in this like phase where your values are more autonomy, freedom, empowerment, agility, accountability, transformation? Are you maybe situated below, right? This can also be less complex. In the 2nd, still needing like some values being connection, respect, listening, open communication, being heard, being seen, something like that can still be. And we don't only are in one of those stages, we definitely are in multiple, but we have a center of gravity, pretty much, right? Maybe you're already evolving into like more complex, kind of more into your highest version, where you are fully expressing yourself, where trust is coming online, where passion, where integrity is coming online, where mentorship and coaching is important, where you really want to contribute to something bigger in the world. Maybe that's already. I would love to hear where you sense yourself are. And if you enjoyed this podcast, if you think that was helpful for you, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with people you think that could benefit from this. And if you're in a transition into a more meaningful life, or in a life that feels meaningful, where like this kind of higher version is coming online and you're like kind of struggling, you're in this confused state, it can create a lot of tension. Definitely reach out, write me a DM, contact me via my social channels, because I'm super, super happy to help you right now, but it can always change. I have 2 spots open for my one-on-one coaching, and I'm always very happy to speak at any events that you have in the future. And I'm wishing you a beautiful day. Enjoy this day and enjoy your life. I'm sending you all the smiles from right now. I'm in Portugal, Ericeira, and I'm wishing you all the best. Much love. This was Matthias. Bye-bye.